Well, g'day and welcome back. When we left you at the end of part 3 of this series, I'd just finished stripping the cabinet. It was a bit of a messy business and I didn't video much of it. I've since finished stripping it, I've sanded it off, and I didn't video that either because frankly it wasn't all that exciting. So I'm just about to put some of the grain filler, it's actually sanding sealer, on the timber on the bits that I'm going to be varnishing or lacquering, and I'll have to deal with the brown stripping edges and whatever. So this has come up quite well. These dark brown edges are going to be tricky, I think. I've sanded them just about all off except for this front section here and this section around here. I've been thinking about this and I decided the best way to do it is to put on the sanding primer first. It's basically grain filler that you paint on and sand off, and any little bits that I get over the edge can then be cleaned off before I put on the brown colouring in the edging here. And if I happen to mess up the brown colouring and go over the edge a little bit, if I do that before I've sanded off the grain filler or the sanding primer, I can take that bit of colour off while I'm sanding. So that will allow me to minimise masking and cover a myriad of mistakes that I'm bound to make. So I'll start with this, and I'll start on top just because I feel like it, and we'll go from there. I've decided to start on the bottom of the front of the cabinet with the sanding sealer. The reason for this is that I found a tiny spot on the top that needed a spot of filler, so while that's drying I'll get on with this. And this is good because it's usually the first time you see what the colour's going to be like. Not terribly critical because you're going to sand it off anyway, but probably not a great idea to get it all over everything. Just brush it off sideways. I ran out of light for video yesterday when I was doing this, but I have finished a coat of sanding primer or sanding sealer over all the veneer panels on it, except this central section, which is a shellac finish, and I'm going to keep that as is. You can probably see here a shiny bit where I sprayed some lacquer over it just to see how it would turn out, and it looks pretty good, so I'm going to leave it like that. So now I have all these end bits, all this trim around here to deal with, and my theory, as I said before, is that with this sanding primer on it, if I go over the edge a little bit, I can sand it off when I'm taking off the sanding primer, and I think that should work all right. I don't know. I will be masking some of it, of course, but that will cut down on masking, and well, I'll get into it and see how that goes. So I've checked a few combinations against the colour on the radio, and pretty much what I used for the Chrysler radio I did a little while ago is close. So about 2 parts raw umber to 1 part black. So I'll put in a fair whack of raw umber and about half as much black. I think that's about right, and I'll just use a coffee stirrer to mix it all up. Mix it up a bit more with the brush. And I think I will mask this section, this central section here, because it looks tricky to sand around. So I'll just put that on there. So here we go. And I think once this is covered in lacquer, which it will be obviously, I'll spray the whole cabinet as one. It should come up with a nice glossy finish. That's pretty even. Now I'll just see how I go hand brushing this edge in. So as you can see, I've got this piece of trim done. It is quite easy. If I do go over the edge, it wipes off this sanding primer quite easily with a damp cloth, and any residual paint I should be able to, well, will come off when I sand this off. Just trying it with a wet brush just to smooth the surface. That seems to work quite well. That said, the surface is pretty good. Of course, you have to put as much effort into sanding these as you do to the rest of the cabinet. And I did put a fair bit of effort into it. I think it's paid off. I hope so. I have ended up doing quite a bit of masking. I hadn't intended to. Just need to get this right. But I found in the long run it was easier to mask than it was to fix the mistakes. So, although the paint does wipe off this unsanded sealer quite well, it's a time-consuming process, so I'm going to go with masking most of it, and a good coat of the brown body colour. The weather's turning a bit nasty. A bit of wind coming up. I don't think I'll be able to do any spraying today. I should though be able to get it sanded off and ready to go, and I believe tomorrow is going to be a nicer day. Well, that's got all the edges filled in, and I think I've picked up any blemishes in them, so there's nothing for it now but to start sanding off this sanding primer. So here we go. And the idea with this, or at least the way I do it, is to sand until you just see some wood colour come through in the dust. At the moment the dust that's coming off it is white. When that starts to turn wood colour, you're just touching the top of the grain and you're through the sanding primer. We've got a way to go yet though. And I'll just go over that again. And we are starting to get some brown colour through here now, so that's about as far as I want to go with that. Just wipe this off with, this is a slightly damp cloth. It's not wet by any means, just a slight hint of dampness in it. And just have a look at the surface. And that's actually looking pretty good. And we've got the second side done. And this is going to be the tedious part, these sections along the side here. And for these I'm going to use a metal blade with the sandpaper over it. Well, the weather's not looking too bad. I've just about got it ready for paint. I'll give it one last wipe down, but I think I could probably get a coat on it this afternoon. It's about 3:30. It's time for it to dry off. I don't think it's going to rain. The wind's light. Yep, it should be okay, I think. Let's give it a go. Alright, here we go. Well, that's one coat done on the front. I haven't done the top yet. I'll let that dry off a bit. I don't want any runs on it if I tip it up. Well, that's had about half an hour to dry off. It's not going to run now if I tip it up, so I'll give the top a go. I'd have to say the finish is not too bad for a first coat. It will need a rub down on a second coat, or probably several more. Well, this box has just arrived from Carl, and I'd be willing to bet that it's my magic eye tube. Hey, look at the size of that. That's huge. VI 103. It is apparently equivalent to the 6U5 that's in the radio, but okay, so it's mostly wrapping. Yeah, okay. So that will probably fit in. It is an octal base, so I'll have to do a socket change. It's about the same length as the 6U5. And about the same diameter base. I think we'll manage to get it in okay. So I found a valve data sheet on the VI 103, and apparently it's a military valve used in the 1930s, and had gone out of use by the time even this radio was built, so it predates the radio by a few years. I'm going to need an octal socket, and I've got this one that I pinched out of an old chassis. I've got it cleaned up pretty much. I'll just give it a bit of a clean out with contact cleaner, or electrical clean and lube. Don't want to get my data sheet dirty. And a dental pixter. of a wipe. Looking at this, I think the new socket will fit in the same base as the old one, which will make life easy. And I did mark what all the wires were when I was testing the old valve, so that'll be easy. I'll just take them off, mark them, and then transfer them across. So this one's the target, just came out of here. Yep. So the wires go through underneath the connector and back in, which makes them difficult to get out. Should be alright though. And that kind of worked. So this one is cathode. This one here's the grid. We'll have him out next. You'll keep that, you never know when you might need one. I think they're the two fat pins there, aren't they? Yeah. I'll keep it with the valve, which is of no use to anyone, but I'm not going to throw it away, it's too nice. So I've got my little gadget out. These things do come in handy from time to time. One down. Just put a bit of heat shrink on the grid wire, it's a bit frayed. Alright, so here we go. Just unwrap it from its wrappings. And there we go. There we go, I've got it taped up there. I don't want it falling off and breaking or anything. So I'll go on to dim bulb first just to make sure nothing drastic's going to happen. But it doesn't seem to be. Okay. I'll wait for it to warm up. And we have a green glow in there already. I'd have to say that's looking pretty good.
Wrong side of it, some blue streak. Right. 420 is Ron Hawkswell.
Now that's 6PR, I think. That will be about the strongest station around here, and it's still not closing up all the way on that. Just wondering if there's any adjustment I can make to it, but probably not. Alright. I've been trying to work out why the gap in the Magic Eye tube doesn't close fully, even on the strongest stations. I would expect that on a strong local station it would close up completely. So here's the 6U5. So the grid runs through this resistor R28, and R28 is 1.75 meg, 1/3 of a watt. I may have missed checking this resistor. This goes to point X on the circuit diagram, and point X is here, comes off the secondary of the second IF, which you would expect. It's in the AGC circuit, and I know that there's no resistors in the connector socket of the tube, so this is going to be in the chassis somewhere. So I'll just check around and see if I can find it. Okay, so I've got the chassis upside down again, and here is the bunch of wires coming in from the Magic Eye tube, just behind this cap here where you can't see it, and the grid wire was a red wire, and there are no red wires coming out here, which is rather bizarre, but I worked out that it's this green one here. So that wire goes in red and comes out green. I don't know what magic is happening inside that cable. But this green wire leads through this black wire along here, along this black wire to the second IF, and hidden behind this resistor here, I'll see if I can get the camera on it, is a 1.75 meg resistor. You can just see it from down here, and it does indeed say 1.75 meg printed on the resistor. And yeah, I'm pretty sure I didn't check that one. I don't know why, but I didn't. Maybe because it was too hard to get at and I was lazy. Anyway, let's just check it and see what it reads. So I've got one side of the meter clipped to the end of the grid where it goes out to the Magic Eye tube, and looking across that resistor, and we've got 3.7 megs. So that 1.75 has become a 3.7 meg resistor. I suspect that changing that might do the trick. So this is going to be fun. Okay, so rummaging through my small stock of resistors, I've got a 1.5 meg, and if I just put that in series with this 220k, that should do it. I don't keep a big stock of resistors because there's an electronics shop 5 minutes down the road, so I just go and buy what I need most of the time. Okay, so I've made that up with a couple of pigtails on the end of it. As I said, I'm not going to try and video putting it in. It's hard enough to get my fingers in there without the camera as well. Well, there they are in the chassis, and while I was in there I accidentally cut the leg of this capacitor here. I couldn't see what I was doing. I thought I was cutting the resistor wire and I wasn't. So that cost me another half an hour of mucking around. Alright, well that's done. So while I've still got it upside down, just in case I've done something extremely silly, I'm going to power it up on dim bulb. Dim bulb on, got an aerial on it, so we'll see how we go. Dim bulb is behaving itself as it should, so I'll go to full power. No need to have that in circuit, and pretty soon we won't hear anything because I haven't plugged the speaker in. Back in a sec. Okay, I had to turn the chassis around to make the speaker cord reach. So where were we? Yes, plugging it into dim bulb. Dim bulb is, it is on dim bulb. We'll go on. Still okay. So I'll go off dim bulb, and shortly we should hear sound and see the tube glowing. Not just yet, give it a minute. There we go, the tube's coming up.
Starts it out to the left, bends it back, he hits the post. Free space. Swans have it on the southern wing. It came to Parker.
Okay. That isn't quite what I expected. There's not much difference. I'll just show you. Okay, well that's it. The glow isn't all that bright either, although I've got a lot of light in here. I might just turn this off. Okay, so there we have it. It still doesn't close up all the way, even on strong stations. And that's the local ABC. That should be full on. I've got an outside aerial on it. I've got my long line aerial hooked up. That should be a very strong signal, that one. I think I'll try disconnecting the aerial altogether. So that's 0 signal. And yep, back to what should be a very strong signal. So that's a bit disappointing. I'm wondering if it's got enough B plus on it. I'll check the voltages, just see what's getting through to it. Okay, so the radio's warmed up and running, and let's just have a look at some voltages here. This is the target. We've got 255 volts on it. This is the plate. 76 volts. Very low. This will be at the screen voltage, I suppose. I'll check the screen voltage in the chassis. 297, runs through a 25k resistor. I've got 256 here going into the tube, 256 arriving here at the tube, and it runs through a 1 meg resistor which is mounted in the chassis to feed the plate. Come on, let's just, we're getting nothing there. 73 volts on the plate. I'm wondering if that 1 meg resistor might be a bit high for this tube. Maybe it's got a higher plate current and it's dropping too much over that resistor. Maybe if I reduce that resistor a little bit, I'd get a little bit higher plate voltage. Whether that would make a difference to it, I don't know, but I'll give it a try, just see what happens. So we've got a 1 meg resistor to the plate. Maybe if I jumper that with, I'll see what I've got lying around, that'll just drop it down a little bit.
Julius Purcell was in Getaria for the anniversary.
Okay, so I've jumpered a 4.7 meg resistor along that 1 meg. That should give me around about 800k. And looking at the plate voltage now, hang on, what are we on here? Try putting it on 500. 83 volts, up from 75. I would have thought it would need a bit more than that on the plate. I can't see any appreciable difference in the tube. One other issue is I've been searching for tube data on this VI103 and I can't find anything. I found the pinouts on the Valve Museum, but it just gave minimal information, nothing about what plate voltage it wants or what its plate current is or anything. So I really don't know what I'm looking at, but I do know the 6U5 that was in it had a minimum plate voltage of 100. I'm thinking it may have drawn a little bit less current. I don't know, but what I might do is try jumpering that 1 meg resistor with another 1 meg to give me about 500k and see if that makes a difference to the tube. I don't know if that would cause any problems in the radio. I wouldn't think so. Okay, so I've clipped another 1 meg resistor across. That should give me about 500k, and we'll see what we've got on the plate now. 94 volts. Again, I can't see any appreciable difference on the tube. That's still got a very narrow shadow angle, and that is on a very strong station. As I tune around, it closes up a little bit, and if anything, the glow is duller. I'll just turn the light off. And just tuning across the stations, I'm seeing some difference there, but not a lot. Really, I'm no better off with that than I was with the 1 meg resistor in circuit. In fact, I'll just remove this resistor. Okay, that makes some difference. It's become brighter, if anything, maybe. I'm not at all sure how low I can go with that resistor. I don't really want to put any additional load on the B+. I don't suppose it would make much difference. Just looking at the screen voltage on the chassis, it's sitting on 290 with that jumper resistor in. Now if I take the jumper off, it doesn't affect it at all. Okay, so I've jumped a 270k resistor across that 1 meg, and we'll see what we've got on the plate now. 118, 119 volts, and the shadow is very narrow now. I'll just kill that light. So that's
Editing. The Best Picture nominee.
Sound editing.
that's pretty good, I think.
That's Vicky, a retired public school teacher in Colin's wife.
I'll just check what the screen voltage is on the radio. We're not pulling it down at all. 289, 290. If I take the jumper off, exactly the same, so it's not pulling down any voltages or anything like that. I'm possibly being silly, but I'm not 100% sure what I'm doing here. So I reckon I'll go with that 270k resistor in place of the 1 meg. So while I had one leg of the resistor lifted off, I thought I'd put a meter on this and just check what sort of current it's drawing. That's on the 20 milliamp range, and we're getting 0.5 of a milliamp. So that's really not very much at all. I don't think it's going to cause any problems. I could maybe even go a little bit lower with that resistor without drawing excessive current. It would be nice if I knew what this what voltages this tube required, but that's got the plate voltage at just over 100, and that seems to be pretty close, so I think I'll leave it at that.
The green spikes on, apparently they're going.
And there we have it. The tube itself, the socket itself fitted into the original casing perfectly, just snapped in, so you'd never know the difference, apart from a few wrong resistors and the wrong shaped tube. But it's going well enough, I think. The glow in the tube isn't terribly strong, but it's good enough, I think. This is supposed to be a new old stock valve though, so I'll kind of expected it might be a little bit brighter, but you never know. It is very old after all. It's been sitting in its carton presumably since 1930 something. So beats me, but it's going to have to do. Well, at least the Magic Eye tube's working. That's a good start. I do think we've lost a little bit of brightness somewhere in the process, so I might have to do a little bit more fiddling with it. I also need to do an RF alignment on it, and there's still a good deal of work to do on the cabinet. The weather hasn't been great, so it hasn't been great for spraying and finishing woodwork. So I had hoped that this would be the last video in this series, but it's not going to be, I'm afraid. I'll have to leave it here. I'm running out of time for this video, and so I hope you can join me in the shed for the next video. It may be 3 weeks before the next one because I'm going on a short holiday up the coast, just a quick trip up to get away from it all for a few days. So we'll catch you in the shed next time. Thanks for watching.